Welcome to Whispers from the Raven's Nest, episode 3. I think this is episode 3. Yes, I believe so. I was trying to take a nap again before work, and I just had all of these thoughts coming in. A part of me that is ready to be shared through this. I didn't think I probably would go into for a while because it feels kind of vulnerable, and at the same time, I know a part of me has been wanting to be witnessed in this, and I feel it connecting to multiple things. I don't even know where to start. Let me see. I guess I'll start with, it kind of plays into it, kind of doesn't. So I saw the movie Sinners for the first time today, and I'm posting this the same day, probably later today when I get to work and I have a moment to actually add the video, the fireplace and all that, which I actually really like. I was like, I might play around with different visuals, but for now I really like the fireplace. I always love the sound of it, the look of it, the energy, the frequency of a fireplace, especially when it crackles. But anyway, I saw the movie Sinners for the first time yesterday on Mother's Day. And without spoiling it, it was a little different than I thought it would be from the previews. And at the same time, there were certain aspects that I really liked to see. And I'll say without saying, just the music scene from the previews, man, that touched me really deeply. And that's all I'll say for now. There was a deep connection, a deep ancestral thing. And like I could watch that again over and over, just that scene alone. And I plan to when it comes out. And there were other aspects of the movie that I felt very connected to. Even just the history and seeing what examples of what my ancestors went through. Like whenever I see movies like that, it always touches a part of me. I always feel like I'm tapping into a part of them, to see them, to witness them, to hold space for them, to move some of that energy through me and out of me that's there. And there's a certain reverence there and gratitude, because if they hadn't survived and had a certain resiliency and pushed through, I wouldn't be here, and others wouldn't be. So there was that, and then other parts that was kind of shown, like hoodoo practices and other stuff, and even the dynamics between, also from the previews, as you see kind of the bad guy and them interaction. I'll just say certain aspects of that, how it was portrayed, also had a deeper double meaning too. So anyway, I saw that, and then because it's about 5:15. I woke back up I dozed off maybe about 9 or 10 last night, and then I woke up, I think about 2 or 3 something a.m. today. I don't remember. I was listening to some stuff, and then stuff just kept flooding in for this next episode to share. So I had a dream that woke me up. Part of it too. I don't remember all of the dream, but towards the end, I'll just say I got some messages where they tapped into some magic, some hoodoo stuff, and then some other things that I'm kind of integrating. I'll just say some practices. So that's not really hoodoo. It's more energy work related, but still. So, and then I was listening to this episode. I forgot her name. I think it's Alchemy, the Alchemy Channel or something. But she was talking about how you being sacred and holy, and not everybody can hold you or handle you or something. And it was interesting. She said something which was true, because I've had some experiences with people, and to be honest, I don't feel like, I've always noticed, basically, since I was younger, that since my first relationship, I grew a lot through relationships. Like we all have certain things we go through. But even looking at my natal chart, one of the biggest things I go through is relationships. And I've noticed that. So say for instance, my very first relationship in high school, that I was with him for 3 years. At that time, because of childhood things and other things, I wasn't very great at communicating my emotions. So much so that it was like a part of me had a lock, like a deep lock on my throat. And that's part of a big theme of my journey too, is speaking my truth, which is kind of the work I'm doing now. But so much so that I noticed that even if there was a misunderstanding between, maybe my partner thought I didn't care about something and I cared more than he thought, like it was like I couldn't speak on it. So much so it's just like, even if I knew he thought I didn't care, I couldn't talk. I just let it be that. And it was like this part of me just couldn't open my mouth. And I know there was deep wounds there. And I realized that about myself. And I looked, like when the relationship ended, I looked at the whole relationship, not just things he did, but things I did that I could have grown in. And I had decided I was going to be a better communicator. Like, even if it was hard, I was going to work to be better at communicating. And I even noticed certain things that he did that I did not understand. Like, I understood from a logical aspect of, because I was always interested in the psychology of the mind and everything, and from a deeper meaning, like a deep understanding. I could not understand how he would do that, and I was really hurt by it. And so let's say my next relationship, once I got into that, it was funny. I started to realize this dynamic quick. But basically, I got with someone that he was even worse at communicating than I was. It was like spirit gave it back to me, like times 3. And that also like cemented not only the understanding of like, this is what I did, this is what I could do better, but it was also now the roles are reversed to really see how that feels. And then another thing in our relationship happened towards the end that caused me to kind of do a similar thing that my ex did, which I might get into all this stuff a later time. This isn't really what this is about, but to understand really where he was, to really understand actually where he was at. And basically I've always gotten lessons through relationships. And sometimes I notice when something came up from a previous one and I didn't have a full inner understanding of it, it might come up in the next one. And it helped me grow each time. It helped me to not be as closed off to like, it's just black and white. Like, no, there's gray in between. Don't get me wrong, certain things I do feel like there's this and it's that. And though I've also learned that there are many layers and things can be very complex. And also, that's me though. I have always had a certain depth to me. And now I'm at a point where I realize that's just me. I'm meant to have depth in my things. Like I've had people say like, it's not that deep. For me it is, because that's part of me. So anyway, what was I going into with that? Oh, so I've always learned through relationships. I kind of don't fully remember, but I kind of do. Oh, so she was talking about that. So the point is, I've continued to grow and expand, and it's still things that are still not my greatest areas, that still require work. And that's okay. I'm working through those things, especially when it comes to humaning, as they say, the human experience. I can be very spiritual, and I can go high, connect to the higher realms and the lower realms, and I don't mean like kind of like evil, but like, as they say, like shamanism type things, and everything. And humaning, yes, certain aspects has been fine, but I've always kind of been challenged in other areas. And that's been a lot of the work I've been doing to kind of ground those things, because I am a bridge. And that's part of my lesson, a big part of my journey. So anyway, but she was basically saying that how those of us that do the work, continue to work, how there is a sacredness and a holiness there that not everybody can handle or should be allowed to have access to. And that's so true. And because the more I'm growing and learning, the more I'm realizing how sacred I am, the more sacred it is for someone, for one in general, but also especially when you choose to do the work, because it's not easy at all. It can have times where, yes, it is enjoyable, but to really do the inner work, to go within yourself, to really excavate yourself, that is some of the most challenging work you can do, because you don't know what's going to come up. And if you're somebody who's really tapped in, sometimes, a lot of times, it's not just you're working through. Like I said, it's a lot of ancestral stuff, a lot of collective stuff. And that's a continual process. So, just like when it comes to sexual relations, I don't just do that with anyone. Even when I was younger, like, there was a certain sacredness to it. And as I've gotten older, as I've had more experiences, I've even realized how much more it is. And I'm continuing to have a certain sacredness around it even more. And like, no, not everybody can have access to me. And then us too, as women, I've had to learn this lesson. When you take someone inside of you, you are literally, the womb is literally made to multiply, to birth things out. So say, for instance, if you decide to be with somebody who is not fully mentally stable or, emotionally there, you're taking in that energy. And unless you intentionally clear that out, a part of you is holding that on, is multiplying it, and that is what you're going to birth through your actions, through your mindset, through your life, or through other situations. That is just the truth about it. A lot of people, we focus on the physical, but it is a lot deeper than that. Everything is made up of energy, even physical matter. It just moves a lot slower so we can see its shape, its definition, feel its mass. But energy is everywhere, it's everything. It's just the things sometimes that move extremely fast we can't see. That does not mean it's not there. Or if it's on a different spectrum, we're not meant to see, maybe, without intention, without maybe doing work, especially as we're having a human experience. So, I had decided I had made certain decisions, even when I was younger, even before I started having sexual relationships with somebody. I had told myself that I'm not going to do that with anyone, that even if it does not work out, that if I got pregnant, they would not be there for their child. And that was just something personal. Just because just for my own relationship with my father not really being there consistently. So that was important to me. Now, I'll be honest, there was one time I was with one person that I realized that I wasn't so sure about them. And I was in a whole different phase of my life. Some stuff was going on, but hey, that was one person that I ever have engaged with that I was like, no. But I had that realization quick. Other than that, though, every other person that I've ever been with, I was like, okay, I feel like I said, even if it does not work out with us, they would be there for their child. And then, as I've had more experiences, I was like, you know what? And I went back and forth for certain things, especially because I've been vegetarian, vegetarian minimum. I still eat plant-based raw food and vegan food too. I went through a phase I don't know if I want to be with anybody who's not also, just because when you eat meat and everything else, it affects your fluids in your body. And I was like, I don't know if I want to take that. If I'm honoring my temple in this way, if I want to, and I went back and forth with that. That's still something I'm kind of, that's still something I'm still working through. And also, I don't eat meat, but I had for the life, and it's been about, 9, 10 years for me. Um, I had fish 1 year though, not gonna lie. It was probably about 5 or 6 years ago. And so about the 5 or 6 years I haven't had anything. Now it's funny, for the last year and a half I have been craving I noticed my body would start craving meat more, and that's a whole nother conversation. So I have started exploring. I have like bone broth. I take that from like regenerative farming. I'll do like an ice cube of like bone broth a couple times a week and like a tea. Because I noticed my body was telling me for like over a year I would keep getting thoughts of wanting bone broth. And finally I got to the point not being so rigid, and it became more about yeah, I can still honor like the planet and the animals and stuff and do things and myself if that's what I need, but I also want to make sure my body's optimally getting what it needs, not being so strict where I can't allow my body to get what it needs to feel nourished and healthy. So that's still a journey I'm on. So I don't yeah, that's still something I'm exploring. So just my life, my journey is always has been one of teaching me to be open, and it's not always so black and white. But anyway, and I had a deep experience when it comes to especially taking energy in from one of my exes from a couple years ago. And that's kind of really what I wanted to touch into. So getting back to what she said, and I'll kind of loop this around. She gave an instance where, especially when you're very maybe spiritual or you do the work, she gave an example of, say, if like you're laying with your person, like you're asleep or something, and say 2 or 3 o'clock in the a.m. rolls around and you randomly wake up, and you say you need to go to the living room, you light a candle, you're moving energy, you're channeling, you're doing whatever work, and say, then you need to like release, and maybe you're doing it through crying or something. Like having the type of partner that respects you, honors you, and knows how to hold space for you in a way of like where maybe they notice that they give you your space for one, let you do what you need to do, and then when you're done they might come in, hold you, blow out the candle or snuff it more, especially if it's something that's going, but that's a whole nother story too. It might carry you back to bed, tuck you in, and hold you, and kiss you. Like, they understand the work that you just did. They understand the sacredness, the intensity, and the power of it, and they're holding space for you in a way that is aligned to the sacredness of what you are doing and of you, versus just someone that can just try to hand you any way, that comes in, interrupts what you're doing, and doesn't understand the sacredness of it, and things like that. And when she said that, I teared up a little bit because it touched a part of my soul. And going back from that, and I realized that, yeah, I do desire that. Like, I've known that, yes, I desire to be in partnership with someone who I can be my fullest self with. So for me, sometimes that is, I might be up and I might do a ceremony or a ritual at 2 or 3 a.m. or 10 a.m. or whatever. Still managing my day-to-day stuff. But for me, that's a big part, is ceremony, ritual, and channeling in and tapping in. And it could look different. And I'm bringing up this ex because he was someone that was very, he had spiritual practices, let me say this. He was the first person I've been with that had spiritual practices. Everyone else I've been with, they hadn't really done it. And realistically, too, I hadn't really gotten deep into my practices until probably maybe the person before him, some years before that. And I had kind of really more was on like, I wasn't as open about it, let's just say that. But I was open, like, yeah, I'm into crystals and everything else and everything. And he was like, that wasn't his jam. But he was also like, all right. But at this point in my life, yeah, I was a lot more deep. I was more open, but I still wasn't as open. But I had got a lot deeper into my practices. And it came to candle magic and energy healing and channeling and just knowing some of my gifts a lot more. And so um, he was, and it was interesting though, because he turned out to be someone that was very, basically, it turned out to be an abusive relationship, to say the least. Not so much physically, but more emotionally, mentally. Like, he didn't outright say stuff that was just outright disrespectful, like calling me out of my name and stuff like that. But it was more of a gaslight thing, and over time, basically, what it was is that he had had all of his own trauma that he never really dealt with. And that experience, I don't know, and I don't, to be honest, because it seems like, because I'm a different version of myself now. Like, certain experiences, they shift you and they change you, just like all my other experiences, but that one definitely did. So I honestly don't remember if before that, if I believed that someone very spiritual also was kind of mentally, emotionally stable. I believe a part of me did, based on my own experiences of knowing, like, because I don't know, in my mind they were connected, but I also realized that I think that's just me. Don't get me wrong, there are other people that do that work and they make sure that they were taking care of, like, spiritual and mental, emotional stuff. But I'm saying just me in the aspect that was my journey, because my mental and emotional stuff started before I went deep into my spiritual journey intentionally, but yet it was always part of my spiritual journey, if that makes sense. So it's like, growing up, I've always had a thirst for knowledge, even as a little child. So I always learned, expanded, always had a curiosity about psychology. And I had early experiences that created mental and emotional wounds and traumas, where mental wellness and health was always important because of my own challenges and struggles. And then as I got older, I started to look into more like holistic health and healing. And then as I got older, I went deeper and more intentional into spirituality itself. And as it grew and expanded, I just put it all under the same umbrella, because that's what it looks like for me in my life. So I believe, because of my own journey, it was like all one for me. And I didn't really think about that it's not always the same for people. It was like annoying, but I didn't really at the same time. Even though I saw other people, because some of the other people that I saw, they seemed to also be, that was in practices, kind of decently mentally, emotionally stable. So this was just a different experience for me. And actually, I need to pee really quick. I feel energy flowing. I'm gonna pause really quick. Okay, I'm back. I had to pee. Oh, it's like I can feel the energy flowing out of me, because it's like now I'm starting to share and speak and not just hold it in. And so yeah, so to me, I always thought those were kind of inclusive, and I realized and I learned through that experience that no, they're not. And also, it looks different for everybody. So, for example, I'm not going to get all into it. Another day I might, but for instance, there was times that we did a couple, like, spiritual things together. Like, I remember once we were doing some ceremony on tapping into working with the archangels and clearing or protection or something. And when I tap in, I just kind of like intuitively flow. I remember when and it got to the point where he tried to kind of control the ceremony and my flow and my movement. Like, say, like, I have my eyes closed and I'm sitting and I'm channeling, I'm tapped in. And then, so at one point, it came to me through my team to stand, and I'm moving and flowing energy. So even though I have my eyes closed, I can feel him trying to move me around, like physically trying to not push me, but like guide me to move here or there. And I'm like kind of like shrugging him off because I'm trying to stay tapped in. And anyway, when it got done, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, I don't need you to control my flow. Like, just like I don't try to control, like times where he went into channel and everything else, I let him be. Like, if we're sitting and he's over here doing his thing, I'm gonna let you do your thing. I'm not finna like try to control how you do things. It's not for me to. It's other times where I was like starting to tap into energy, and in this instance, I don't know, maybe it's fine, but like I was like kind of bent down, and I was channeling, I was moving some energy or something. He came over and he kind of hovered over me and kind of held me, and it didn't. It in that instance, like, yeah, maybe he was just trying to support, but it didn't feel like it came from that, because I also realized he had this deep wound about needing to be needed, where he would just push and force his way into things. So just like it got to like he tried to tell me how I need to do certain things, like working out and dressing and other stuff. And I realized, like I said, I realized quickly that because he had deep wounds around PTSD traumas from childhood and from active, because he used to be in the military, and he had like wounds around some of his experiences and being in war and stuff. And I'm not saying that as an excuse, because it's not an excuse at all. But I realized through some of those experiences that he's not stable. Like he might have spiritual practices, but mentally, emotionally, he has not been working on himself. Not for real. He was still a child in some ways. And it was initially, and it's interesting too, because how certain things did not come out. And I think I picked up on it though in the beginning. I just didn't know what it was, because I remember basically I met him through, I had a friend and it was his sister. We used to work together. And then me and her connected back. And then when COVID started, we started hanging out at the park once a week. This was like our kind of way to stay in community, stay tapped into our spiritual practices. It wasn't initially when COVID started. It was probably in like June or July of that year. And once a week, we started gathering at the park like super early, which was funny because I wasn't always the earliest person, and I still don't always prefer it. But when it flows though. Like if I wake up in the middle of the night, hey. But we would literally meet about between about 4:30 and 6 a.m. Some days we'd be there a few hours. Some days we'd be sitting out there for 8 hours. And we would like play our sound bowls and meditate and dance and chant and talk and have plant medicines and stuff. And after a while, I met her brother, and it was interesting because the first day I met him, I just got, like, I'm not gonna lie, it felt like crazy vibes. And but it wasn't fully there, and honestly, I wasn't at a point where I fully trusted my thing. I was working on trust a lot too, and that's the journey. But anyway, but that's what it kind of felt like. Just, he had this interesting look. And like as far as facial expression too, when he was walking up to the car to say hi, and I just looked, and I just literally kind of got almost crazy vibes. And so he started hanging out, going to groups, going to gatherings with us, and then once it got colder, we started doing gatherings inside. And then there was another person who ended up joining us regularly, so it's like the four of us. And then eventually got to a point where me and him decided to get together and try things. And honestly, that was guided there to experience that. I'm gonna just say that. And yeah, so so it wasn't any like surface level signs or anything. And it wasn't until like the first month in where he started kind of showing his other side, and that was after I put up a boundary, and it was more of a consideration thing. I asked him just to consider instead of like taking over, like doing certain things that he did basically. And he took an offense. Like I wasn't rude, I wasn't disrespectful, I literally just asked him to consider certain things before he kind of jump in and change the whole environment. It was like, so I'm not going to get into that, maybe another episode. But he took offense. And from that moment forward, he took everything personal. And he even said that. He's like, yes, I take everything personal. I'm like, it's not that serious. And it wasn't me discounting his emotions, but it's like, in that instance, it wasn't. Even to the degree that if I was on a business call, he would call me back to back 10 times, like this happened. Text me, I'm like, and I text him back after the first call or two. I'm like, I'm on a business call, I'll call you when I get off. He literally called me back to back 10 times. And then try to say, like, whenever, like, whatever is going on, you always drop it for your partner. I'm like, no, I'm not finna. Say, for instance, because I had hoped that me and him would work together spiritually in things like maybe gatherings or whatever. And he had too, because he had decided, he had said he wanted to be a shaman. Right? So I'm like, no, that doesn't make any sense. If you're, say it's an instance where you're teaching a class to somebody and I need to talk to you, do you like, or do you plan to just drop and pause the whole class just to talk to me? He's like, yeah, I would, because you put your family first. Okay. In that instance, I'm like, all right, no. Because I get what you're saying if it's an emergency or something. But no, if I'm teaching a class, if these people have chosen to exchange their money, even their time and energy, to come here, and I am supposed to be holding space for them, teaching them something, supporting them, I'm not going to just drop it or pause it just because you want to have a conversation about something that's not important, that cannot wait. That is so disrespectful. And so we got into it. So it was stuff like that. Even in the instance of like, he would tap into certain things too, like it was spirit trying to work with him through his past wounds, where say he was, let's just say he had people that were unfaithful to him before me. And I remember it was a couple times where he stayed over. He had a dream that I was unfaithful to him because of what his ex did. So he woke me up in the middle of the night, 2-3 a.m., to literally try to lecture me about it. Like, and I'm saying this to give give examples. And so I looked at him, because the first time I'm like, what the hell, and then the second time I looked at him, I'm like laying in bed, just looked at him, and I just said, I'm not responsible for your triggers. And that made him so mad, and I didn't care, because it was just like, after a certain point, it got to a thing where it's just like, no. And you may ask, too, why I chose to continue to deal with it. That's a whole nother story. Too, I'll go into it at a later point. But anyway, the point is, I learned quickly, and hold on, let me throw this in too, because I did learn some things spiritually from him. Like, he introduced me to some things like doing ancestral offerings, which I'm grateful for, because it helped me to connect with my ancestors on a deeper level. And I noticed the couple, like before things got really hectic and crazy, times where we were in sync, like it manifested things so quick spiritually. Like I had so many deeper spiritual experiences with him. Like I learned more even about my abilities through him. It was like we magnified each other. The stuff that was great and not so great. But I also learned, because certain people bring out certain things they need to work through. So we were meant to work through certain things together, especially because we both had a spiritual basis and we're tapped in. And with that, it's a choice, and he didn't choose to do the work. So but anyway, I did, and it was certain things that I was called to do I didn't do. Like, I didn't enforce my boundaries enough. That was a big thing for me. I learned in that. I did to a degree, because I'm just like, I'm not with being controlled or forced into stuff. I'm just not. I never have been. It's not in my spirit. And at the same time, I really learned about the importance of boundaries, and sometimes saying what you need to say without worrying about how it's going to come off sugarcoating it. Because it was a couple times where it's like I should have just been honest and said it how I felt it. Because sometimes some people need to hear it a little bit more harsher and more direct. And so I learned that too. So it was like, in some ways, that was the best and worst relationship of my life, because I learned a lot about what's possible in the times that were like more positive and the times that were a little bit more negative and heavy and dense. So anyway, the point is, I basically learned through that experience, they are not inclusive. Spirituality, somebody been on even a deep spiritual journey, and their mental and emotional state is not. Now, I will also say this, though, I've learned from my personal experience, and you know, and that was part of it. The deeper you go on any journey, the deeper those things connect. So say, for instance, for me, the deeper I went on my spiritual journey, the deeper I'm being called to work on the physical aspects of my life, like body, money, home, health, stuff like that. Those are more, they are part of spirituality, and at the same time, they're not necessarily inclusive to it. But the deeper you go into one thing, the calling is going to be to tap into another. So even if somebody who really wanted to expand their mind, body, home, stuff like that, eventually you're going to be called to tap into something higher, because it's as above, so below, as within, as without. It's all connected. So to be able to expand in one, eventually gets to the point you're going to have to grow in another. That's just part of it, to be an overall wholesome being. So, and I believe that's what it was part of too. Our journeys was, maybe he had been doing so much, not maybe, he had been doing a lot of spiritual work, but he isn't working on certain other things, you know. So, and me vice versa too. So anyway, when she said that about the person holding and everything else, and even in my other experiences I've had, I've just realized that it's important that as I honor myself even more and my sacredness even more, that I only allow people who also understand the sacredness to also be around me, who can honor that, whether it's romantically, platonically, whatever. Because if not, I can't fully expand into my highest version, or even close, or to any level, if I always have people around me that don't know how to, doesn't understand the sacredness of me, of what I'm doing, and what type of support I need, and to hold space. Don't get me wrong, I know how to get up, and if I'm working through a ceremony or a channeling or whatever, and even hold space for myself, because I've had to do it like pretty much my whole life when it comes to those practices and everything. And at the same time, we grow in union and in community. So for me to desire to even grow in it, it comes to a point where, yes, I need to be able to receive support and honor that and give support. And I know that I can. I've shown it. Like, that is something that I've seen. I can hold space for someone and honor them and give them support. Whether it's, like I said, if they're doing their own spiritual practices, if they're sick, if they need someone to listen to, and I deserve the same thing in return. So, I think that was just so interesting, because that is the space that I'm moving into, is really honoring my sacredness more, seeing my sacredness more. Like, actually, yeah, this isn't, it's so funny when things, they're just a part of your everyday world. You don't realize that sometimes, no, it's not the norm. And I'm doing finger air quotes, because it depends on who you ask, but for the most part. And I've had realizations lately that my continuous practice is just like a priestess in the temple of, that's a part of my work. And I've been tapping into that frequency more and more lately, and seeing that more and more lately. Just like I even said before, like the next person that I might choose to possibly be with physically, it needs to be someone that they need to be able to honor their temple, and we're going to need to go through our own little rituals first together too, to make sure both of our vessels are cleansed, energetically. Make sure that their past partners are cleansed from them. Mine are for me, even though I'm already doing the work for myself. So it'd be great to be with somebody who's already doing that work so we come together. But even if not, and this is kind of getting to my other point, sometimes, two other points. I had this realization. I heard this a long time ago. And it came to me because sometimes, like I said, I had desired to be with somebody spiritually, and we do work together and do offerings together for people, and that's great if that ends up happening, if that's aligned. And at the same time, I'm at a point where I'm like, if that's not aligned, that's fine, because sometimes what we desire is what we desire to expand in ourselves. The fact of saying that I desire to be with a partner who we can do that stuff together is because honestly, I haven't fully shown up in the way that I desire to fully as a spiritual being, as a guide and support and space holder, and I'm working on that now. But sometimes what we desire in a person is a projection of what we are desiring to expand in ourselves, or something we're not even honoring in ourselves. And when I realized that and thought about that, I'm like, okay, so I'm more open. And sometimes we need someone to help balance us out. So maybe my partner might not be somebody who's as spiritual as me. They probably are somebody who's going to be a little bit more grounded in the earthly realm, who they might be some level of spiritual or open to expand. And when we come together, it's to help to balance and harmonize each other. There's someone that they're like a grounding anchor. Even though, yes, I can ground myself, and in some ways I am already very grounded, and certain things though are improvement areas for me in the earthly realm that I'm working through now. So maybe there's someone that when I do my thing, and because when you tap in, like you're not like you can still be grounded and present, but you're still kind of moving out of your body to a degree. And those that understand what I'm saying, they understand what I'm saying. And so it might be somebody that they understand that, and they're there to help to bring me, like to fully anchor me back in and offer the balance, the contrast to what I am. So maybe for me, like I like how, and this is kind of going back to, I was listening to something recently, how someone said like, yeah, maybe they're 70% spiritual and 30% more physical, or earthly, or feminine, 70% feminine, because a lot of times the spirituality is more associated with the feminine frequency and energy, and 30% masculine, and their partner is going to be maybe 70% more masculine or earthly and 30% spiritual. And that's how, so I am open to the possibility that is what that looks like for me, like really aligned partnership and union. And also it still needs to be though someone who can allow me to do what I need to do, and just like I allow them to do what they need to do, and we honor each other in that and support each other in that. So I just really, that was a big lesson that I learned, because I do believe, some part of me believed that they were together just based on my own experience. And after that, I realized, just seeing the chaos and the craziness and I've seen it in people, but I haven't dealt with it as far as romantically. Like, I've dealt with people who have had things to work through, of course, just like I have things to work through, but like maybe anger stuff or whatever, and that's fine, but they've never taken it out on me or tried to, you know. And that's something I was very clear about. And in that relationship, that was just a whole thing within itself. That's not even a category for it, because it was a big lesson. It was an opportunity of a possible union. But when you, and this is the thing too, when you come together with someone in union, like really, and you're both beings that value growth and expansion, you're going to be called to grow and expand, which means some about this partnership is going to bring out things in you that you have not fully worked on yet. And when that happens, it is a decision that you need to make. Are you going to move forward in this and accept like this opportunity? Because really, that's what it is. It's an opportunity to grow and change and expand. Or are you going to stay where you're at and resist it? And when you resist it, it can create chaos. So that relationship could have went either way. And like I said, for me, I was called to work on my boundaries, which I grew a little bit, but not as much as I could have, and that's me being honest. And also being more in the physical realm, like doing certain things like humaning, I was called to. So, and then I could have grown in more too. Now, like I said, I did learn a lot of lessons about, for one, boundaries and limits and overgiving. That was a big thing I learned too, and that feeds into boundaries too. Because, that just wasn't a healthy relationship. He was not a healthy partner. And yes, I'm saying he, in the aspect of a good chunk of that was him. Now, going back to past relationships, I can say where this and that, and I could have done this and that. And like, I review all of my relationships, so I don't want to seem like I'm just putting it on him. And yet, in this instance, and I'm not putting it on him still, but I'm saying there was a lot of growth he needed to do mentally, emotionally, that he chose not to do. From the things I mentioned to things in other areas I'm not going to get into in this episode. I might in another, because I probably will, just to get that out fully. But yeah, but I definitely learned a lot about my boundaries and what I need to not allow and allow. And even with myself, it. I'm at a point now where a part of me can say I'm grateful for that experience. And in certain things I'm still working through from that experience. Because I didn't realize it was abuse. I knew it was unhealthy. And that wasn't my jam. But it was after I got out of it, like after my nervous system felt calm enough to really look back at it, I had a realization like that was an abusive relationship. And I'm not gonna lie, when I had that deep realization, I was filled with so much rage. It's not even funny. And I had so much rage, like I didn't even know how to work through it, on my own. Or at least, let me not say that. I knew how, but I wasn't in a place yet. Like, if I had to work through it now, I feel more okay to move the energy through myself and everything else. But I really was battling within myself. So I made a decision. I don't know if it was within a week or a couple weeks or a month. I don't know. But it was within a month's time, probably less. That once I realized I cannot handle this on my own, this amount of rage just coming up without me, because there was certain things I wanted to do. Let's just say I battled a decision about using certain rituals and workings against that person. And I really had to battle that, so I went to therapy. And that's another lesson I learned though, but I'll get back to that. So I went to therapy and I went to therapy before when I was younger, but in that instance I knew I needed it. So I went to therapy for about 2 or 3 months, and I saw her weekly until the rage calmed down. And then we talked about other stuff too, but yeah, once I just realized like I don't know how I'm gonna handle, like it was too much for me. And also, granted, I had also been working through my relationship with anger, so that's another thing. So it was like full blown. So I was like very intentional those 2 or 3 months, where when I thought about my ex, that if I can't wish him well, I'm at least going to be neutral. Because I had battled between just really wishing harm on him in his life, And I had never, like, that wasn't my thing. That wasn't part of my values to put that on someone. And so I really battled that. So whenever in my mind I saw myself going to, oh, I just wish him harm or whatever, I literally switched it to, let me just be neutral. I don't wish anything, good, bad, or anything. And I really had to intentionally fight that for like 2 or 3 months. And once I got to a place where it's like, I'm good. I'm not immediately going to, I want to wish you harm or anything. I might not be like, I wish you well, but I'm like, I'm good. I'm neutral. Then it was like, okay, the initial flush of rage had chilled out, and I had worked through the initial rage where I could start to work through the things that came up on my own. And then I didn't need to go to therapy anymore, even though I do think it's good regularly. Um, but yeah. And now I will also be honest too, as I went deeper, even into learning about hoodoo and magic and everything else too. I have a different perspective on that also. Um, don't get me wrong, still at my core, like I don't wish anybody harm. That's just not my core thing. And I haven't ever used my practices in this life on somebody in that way. But now I also understand the importance to still understand it, to know it, to have that ability if you need to. Let's just say that. It was funny because I was just so like, no, 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 that's wrong and everything else. And it's funny because one of the people in our group from the gatherings we used to did, she practiced root work and magic, but she specialized and she loved doing like curses and hexes and stuff. I was like, oh, okay, that's your thing. But I, it was funny because I had took a class. This was later. It was a hoodoo class from somebody that I trust, that does it, and it was called left-handed work. Anybody that knows, they know what that is. I didn't know what that was at the time. I thought it was just like a different type of hoodoo magic, but not necessarily what it was. So I took the class, and we in it, and she talking about curses and hexes and jinxes. I'm like, what is this? And it was so funny. I realized, like, oh, okay. So left-handed work is basically when basically what it is you're using it to kind of harm somebody. You're sending like curses, hexes, jinxes, all different forms. Now, what it also is included is return and sender work. That technically is really not left-handed work. It's more protection work. So I resonated with that one. But basically, it's like when somebody sends you something back. So it's working you do to send negative, ill will that people sending you back their way. You can multiply it or you can send it back. So it's a protection thing because honestly, if nobody sends you anything, it's nothing to send back. So after in that class and just other experiences that life has shown, like I said, the spirit and my journey always has a way of showing if it's something I'm a little bit closed-minded on, they really do show me other aspects of it. So I learned through seeing experiences and everything else, like, no, it's actually nothing wrong with that. It wouldn't be, for me, it's not my go-to, it wouldn't be a go-to thing I'll use, but it's also good to know it. Say, for instance, if you do have an issue with somebody and you're doing everything you can in the physical realm to try to resolve it, whether it's creating space or distance, talking to the person. If you did something wrong, apologizing. If it's a legal thing, going through legal channels. Like, if you're doing everything you can to avoid doing it, even you're doing your own protection work and stuff for yourself and cleansing, but it just stuff just keep happening, it might get to a point where, because some people are actually that vindictive in life, where they just want to see you fail, they just want to see you harmed and hurt and your loved ones for no damn reason or not a valid reason. And that's a whole other thing too. But it might come a point where you might need to send something back to get them to leave, and that's just the case because it's always a spiritual war going on. So I had to learn through certain things I've seen and everything else, and learned that okay, so I'm more open about it. So I don't know. In that instance, because that person was out of my life, I still not saying that that would have been justified if I did. But I also learned where if that person, because I felt them trying to come back in my life at certain points, but let's just say things happened where I got confirmations that they had been stopped in their tracks. Um, if they had tried to come back in my life and start the same stuff over and wouldn't leave, then, hey, if my team told me it was justified to protect my sanity, my peace, my health, not going into stuff I experienced from that, then, hey, I might have. And that's just the honest truth. Um, so yeah, because let's just say, I had another experience though while they were there about kind of the power of protection around me when they went a little too far. Um, and I had a little bit of an emotional breakdown at one point. And so I learned some stuff too, even about the protection around me, even without me doing anything. Let's just say that too. It wasn't intentional on their end, but still. Um, yeah. It's, I don't know, it's just interesting. But I don't desire to have to be in a space, an environment, a relationship where certain sides of me needs to come out. Like, I've always desired peace and ease and play, and growth and expansion, and just being able to enjoy a space with a person. I can do my own thing and they can be there and not always have to be bothered. And I can also do the same for them. And times where we can come together, whether it is to laugh or joke or rest or do spiritual work together or whatever the case may be is. Or, so yeah, but my mind, I've been growing and expanding in it. I've been developing more understanding, and understanding about certain things and concepts in my life. But that was just an interesting experience. And I kind of had brought in all those other elements because they came up for me to talk about. So, yeah, I guess this is complete. I feel like there was something else, but yeah, I'm not sure. I felt like there was something else, but maybe not. But I will say I'm at a point in my life, though, where when it comes to them, I'm grateful for the experiences because I learned a lot. There are certain things I'm still working through from that experience. So there are parts of me that kind of get annoyed, I'm be honest. And it's funny, though, because when you don't... Oh, that's what I was going to say. Another thing, too, because I remember once he said that he wished me ill will, like he said this. And that's when I realized, no, we're not the same. We're not the same at our core. Like, the mere fact, because it was it wasn't working out, and he was talking about us breaking up or whatever, and it was just because it don't work out, first you wish me ill will, because you're not getting your way, and I get it, people be hurt and everything else, but no matter what I've experienced with a person, there was one other person that hurt me deeply, a long time ago, second person I was ever with, and I did have to battle. Now at that time I didn't practice certain things or anything, but I was a little bitter for a couple months, and then I had a realization. I was like, I'm not gonna let one person turn me bitter and block me from love. And I made that decision in my life, and ever since then, that's never happened again. No matter how hurt I've been, there's certain times where I make decisions internally, and it's just, that's what it is. And so, and even in that instance, I didn't wish him ill will, so yeah, but that made me realize we are not the same. We're not aligned. Because even through all this craziness, I don't wish you ill will. And anyone that and like I said, I did have to battle once I had that realization, because it was like I didn't deserve that. I didn't deserve to be treated like that. All because you don't know how to handle your shit. And that's what it was. You don't know how to handle your shit. And we were different. It was funny because we were both Virgos, which don't necessarily mean anything. It was the first time I ever dealt with somebody in my same sign. But we had two different ways of handling things. He was the type of person that when he gets triggered, he explodes externally. And I mentioned, I think in the other episode, I kind of had a couple times in my life where I would do it when stuff builds up. But my default was going internal, where I would more shut down, where I need to go in my own space, my own world, and I deal with my stuff when I come back out. And that might mean creating space. He was the type, he tried to explode on any and everybody around him. That was how he handled it. And so, like I said, it was just a lot of emotional and mental instability. And you couldn't tell from like how like regular, normal day-to-day stuff interacting with him, but it was once you got into that. So, and he said nobody else had ever triggered him like that, and that could be true too. That could honestly be true, because I've realized about myself too, because of the work that I do and I've done my whole life. Because I've always been somebody who wants to know below the surface what's going on, to dig it up, to excavate it. I have a certain frequency about me, like just even in general, that if you are around me for an extended amount of time, stuff from deep below is going to come up for you to work through within yourself. That's just what it is. That's the frequency I carry with me, that I am. And I also have a nurturing energy too. So it's like stuff is going to come up, but at the same time you're going to, and it's like a safety to go deep and explore, but at the end of the day you still have to make the decision to work through it. So it's like, if you don't want to do that work, I'm not somebody that you want to be around like that all the time. Just like I've been around other people that they have also had that type of frequency. So so that's what I'm saying. Like, maybe that was the case. Maybe he didn't ever get that triggered and chaotic with other people. That's also a possibility, because he hadn't really dealt with anybody, for one, as spiritual as me either, or that had done as much mental and emotional work that I have done either. So that is also a possibility. So, because at first I'm like, whatever, and then I was like, let's just be honest too about the frequency that I carry and how it affects people. I've been seeing it all my life. So I was like, yeah, I don't know, there might be some truth to it. Either way, I saw it as an opportunity to grow, like, for both of us. And we don't always get certain opportunities or in certain ways and spaces. And sometimes when we don't necessarily utilize that opportunity, it might come back around, but it might be a little bit more challenging. Or we might not have as much support in it. Things happen different ways for different reasons. So, there's one last thing I'm going to share about it. Because I had also said growing up, or not growing up, but as I had went into my journey, that I wanted to be a shaman and do shamanic work for myself and with others. And it's funny because a spirit brought to me a message about their relation. Like I said, I've received lots of messages about it. They brought to me a message one day when I was driving about their relationship after it ended. And it was funny because it was like laughing in a funny way. Not like at him, but it was like giving me a realization. It was like, oh, like when he said he wanted to be a shaman. It was like, oh, you want to be a shaman? Okay, well, let's see if you can handle the inner work. Let's see if you can be that for yourself first. Because a shaman typically is someone who can take someone through the depths of themselves, through the darkness, through the shadows, and back up again, and help them work and integrate through that. So to do that, you need to be able to work through those things yourself. You need to be in a good place foundationally, mentally and emotionally, and not only just be able to do the spiritual work. Because if you're someone who is able to tap into those frequencies, that means you're connected. You're able to connect to yourself and to others and to the world around you in that way. Which means if you're working with somebody and they tap into something that touches a part of you that has wounds that has not been healed, you're going to get triggered. You're going to get ungrounded, which means you're not going to be able to hold space for them, which means you can do more harm than good. So it was funny because it's like, oh, you want to be a shaman? All right, well, let's see if you can handle your own shadows. Let's see if you can do the work. I'm going to bring somebody who is also a bit of a shaman around you. Let's see if you can handle it. That was literally how Spirit brought it to me. They were like laughing in a funny way. It's like, oh, you want to be a shaman? Okay, let's see if you can handle this. That's what it was. That was an opportunity to grow. And usually times times in our lives where we have big things like that come up is because it's a groundwork being laid, things being cleared out for a new part of our life that we're being expanded to, that maybe we have spoken those desires that we desire, or spirit or our journey is like, okay, let's see if it's time for you to move into this, if at all, you know. And I got other messages about his karma around that situation, so that's I'm out of it. It's above me now, and I'm gonna just say that and leave that alone. You know, and also acknowledge we all have our own teams. So, um, I know it was a test for me in a trial, moving through that rage and that anger, and what I could have did, and I chose not to. I chose to heal and expand myself instead, and I'll leave it at that too. But yeah, it was just an interesting experience. And I also learned from those things and things come in. I'm just getting clear on what I do and don't desire in my life, and what I am and not deserving of to deal with and to have. So thank you for listening. Like I said, if nothing else, this was just me being witnessed even in myself, and yeah, blessings.